And so what draws people to Catholicism, what draws people to the higher liturgical churches is their uncompromising proclamation of their values and their beliefs, whether or not they're right or wrong. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the I'm Telling God About This podcast. We had another episode queued up in the chute, ready to go. It's going to be a great one, too. You're going to want to watch it. It's an interview. But today, we're recording this the day it's happened, but we just found out that the Pope is dead. Pope is dead. And yes, before anybody gets upset, this is not going to be a dunk session on the Pope, all right? This is going to be a
TBD.
Great conversation, maybe a little bit, but not a lot, right? We know we have some Catholic listeners, and if you're here and you're Catholic and you've been with us from the beginning, you have the heart of the Lord, because for you to be able to tolerate our jabs and prods all the time, just know that it's in love, all right? So, yeah, the Pope died, and this is particularly crazy apart from the fact that this is a major world figure, not just in, church world, but it's a global situation for many people. There's a lot of Catholics globally. I think, I don't know the exact numbers, Josh. I don't know if you know exactly how many, what percentage of global Christendom.
I think if you're being liberal about it, about the numbers, it'd be between 1.5 to 2 billion people.
That's
a lot of
half,
people.
Probably half of global self-identified Christians probably fall roughly
Right.
into the Catholic bucket.
And so, right off the bat, that's big news in the church, and so naturally, we're here to talk about it. We're gonna discuss that a little bit today. If you're one side or the other, it's great. We're gonna get into some of the life.
What do you mean one side or the other? This isn't like a pro or con. The Pope is dead. That happened. It's not like
You're not wrong.
You're
not wrong.
We don't know.
Is it good?
Should we
Is
wait?
it bad?
Show.
Is it right? But what makes it crazy is, he literally, first of all, it's just the timing, right? It's the day after Easter, literally the morning after Easter. And I just flew over Easter back to Europe. So the very first thing I saw this morning on the news when I woke up here in Germany was that the Pope had died. Now, what's even more ridiculous is that we had literally, obviously all the things happening at the Vatican yesterday for Easter. It's the year of Jubilee for them, which is a huge year on the Catholic calendar. Big deal for the Catholic calendar. And now you got a conclave in the middle of that. Like, I was really excited to go to Rome this summer. That ain't happening. Like, spring is flat off the ticket either. It's going to be insane. So, what are you guys' thoughts?
Is there a lot of Pope death tourism? Is that what you're talking about?
Conclave.
Everybody goes
Pope
to
death
travel
tourism.
to Rome.
Can we get that as merch? Red smoke, white smoke. Like, sorry.
I don't know the rules.
Hey, listen, if you know the protocol,
If you're
still
stuck with
here,
us this long, Catholics,
right off the bat,
we're gonna get into some good stuff.
comment down below. All right, is there Pope death
Nobody's
tourism?
off limits.
One of my favorite Catholic jokes, just to get us started off. There's a kid. He's got a Catholic friend, and he himself is a Baptist, right? And so they just they're friends in the same neighborhood. So they decide that they're each going to go to one another's church for a Sunday, just for fun. And of course, not being from a liturgical denomination, the little Baptist boy is having to ask, what does that mean? Like, what do we do here? Because there's all this process and liturgy, all this
down.
stuff. And so they go through it. Then kid sees how the other half of Christians behave, and so then the next week the Catholic comes over to the Baptist church, and some of the same kind of stuff. Things are a little bit different, and so the pastor gets up to give a sermon, and he takes his watch off and he puts it on the podium, and the Catholic boy says, what does that mean? And his friend says, nothing.
That's a joke.
Oh my gosh. It's because everything is symbolic.
Does that not
Everything means
I
something.
get it.
Yes.
Everything is symbolic except the Eucharist. That is the actual.
That
body
is
and
not
blood
symbolic.
of Christ. That is
Right.
not symbolic. So
literal body and blood.
Here's the thing with this happening. It's coming in at a very interesting time within online Christendom. I see a whole lot of Orthodox and Catholic followers. Orthodox Christians, more along the lines of debaters, people that are kind of arguing cultural issues. And then the Catholic apologists like Trent Horn and Jimmy Aiken and a few others of Catholic answers, as well as a couple of others that have debated. And this argument for Catholicism is really getting popular. And so with the advent of, the Pope passing, there's an opening. And I often wonder, like, we're at a time where there's a cultural shift. And what happened when Donald Trump was elected, you started to see this populist movement happening across the world. And so I'm wondering, granted, now, in fact, maybe this would be a good time to share some
Pope.
of the...
Can we nominate him?
No, not
No, but
not suggesting that.
can we get Jude Law as the young pope as the thumbnail for this? Actually,
I
with the
know,
papal
gosh.
tiara, we might have to cut that scene in here at some point. I know where
Well,
you're going with this, so.
But it's interesting to see, like, the kind of the College of Cardinals who thinks that the potential Catholics. I wonder if there's going to be kind of a conservative movement here.
I see your point.
In popes. So you have a whole lot of liberals. You have soft conservatives. There are very few like actual
Hardliners?
conservatives. One of them.
Yeah, where's
one of
the
them's from
Crusade
Germany.
class?
I think. But here's the thing. I think after Pope Benedict, like, good luck becoming a German pope. After that, like,
Yeah, no,
I
it's
guess
true.
bad taste
He-
in everybody's mouth.
Right.
Nazi Hitler Youth and stuff, but that's behind it.
That's
Anyway,
beside the point.
That's beside the point. But somebody from Guinea.
So you were saying
but
a
hold
German?
on.
We have a German hardliner. Is that what you're telling me?
There's a
That's
German
shocking.
hardliner, and there's this guy Willem Ejik. Seems like he might potentially be in
From the
running.
Netherlands.
He's a conservative from the Netherlands.
Wait,
Here's
what
the
about-
other thing.
What
There
about
is a guy.
Pizzaballa? Is he in the running for
Is
Pope?
Pizzaballa-
Cardinal
I think
Pizzaballa?
so.
It's a real thing.
Yes.
It's a
He's
real
the-
guy.
I'm surprised that you know the
was he
name of
from
a
the
cardinal.
Philippines?
I was gonna say.
His name is Pizzaballa. Of course I know the name of a cardinal. I just learned, though, that the cardinal, as referring to a Catholic clergy, preceded the naming of the bird. I didn't know.
Because they're red.
I was gonna
Well,
say
yeah, but
that's interesting.
was the bird named for the cardinal, or was the cardinal named for the bird?
That's a good question. That's a good
Because the
question.
bird obviously existed first as a
Right.
species, so it stands to reason
cardinals
that they'd be
in
like,
Europe? I
"Oh,
don't
why
know.
do you
Are
dress
they-
like this bird?"
That's a good question. That is a good question.
So
I don't
this
see
process will be what you guys said, the word
Pizzaballa.
conclave. That's the Catholic process of choosing the next pope, I assume.
Oh, so we totally
Don't
need to do
go
a
watch the
review.
movie.
No, we're going to do a review on it now. Because we were
Spoiler-
going to do it when it came
spoiler
out
alert.
and after Oscar
The new
season, but I
Pope's
have a
trans.
feeling that it's about to become a lot more popular because everyone's going to be like, what's Conclave? And they're going to Google it and they'll be like, oh, there's a new movie with Ray
here's-
Fiennes or whatever that guy's name is.
Here, check this out, though. Like this guy, our conservative American cardinal. This is the guy that Pope Francis disciplined. He basically got in trouble because Cardinal Raymond Burke said that Joe Biden couldn't receive the Eucharist or shouldn't be able to receive.
I like
the
that
Eucharist.
guy.
Which, for our Protestant friends out there that don't know a whole lot about Catholicism, the Eucharist is a means of salvation. If you don't take the Holy Eucharist, you're not guaranteed into
Hold
heaven.
on, Josh. Christ is
Hold
the
on.
privileged route to salvation,
Well,
according
yeah,
to
okay.
the Pope.
But
Rest in peace.
purgatory, and there's certain steps in the way. Sure, you're not necessarily not going to heaven. It's just there's more work to be done. Anyway, let me go ahead and
Sorry,
stop
did
the
he
share
say
here.
that Christ
Yes.
is the privileged?
Yes.
Meaning what?
He's not the only one who says that. That's like, yeah, that's the one of the issues. It's like here's
What
Vatican
did
II
Jesus say
says
on that, though? Was it no one?
Hey.
I feel like the first almost no one, the privileged,
Yeah.
come to the Father through me. Is that?
it's the privileged route. That's what they say.
Well, the argument
Not my
is
words.
that they're all coming through Christ. They're just not
right.
coming
Prevenient
directly
grace
through Christ.
That's where your
Right.
reform bros will
that's
come out
just
and be
a
like, "See,
universalist
you're
end
just
run.
like them."
Yeah.
So as
Anyway.
the one on this podcast who knows the least,
I don't know about that.
the Pope needs to be replaced because the Catholic
died.
institution can't
Oh.
exist without him because that's how they hear from
yeah.
God.
He
because
is
that's
the
how it's
vicar
always
of
been
Christ.
done.
Okay.
Where are you going to get
Pope
the authority
101.
of interpretation of Scripture if you don't have a pope?
That's right, papal authority, because that's their view, is that God gave Peter the keys to heaven. That's why the key is the papal symbol, or the keys to heaven, right? And so what he binds on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever, vice versa.
What does the Pope actually do?
Forgiveness and stuff.
Not a whole lot in recent years. I mean, he
He has a
appoints.
throne.
He does have a throne.
I've heard they own like the most amount of property of any entity in
Oh
the
yeah,
world,
man.
and like
They're
something
pretty.
like they're their own sovereign nation. I've
Yeah.
been,
Rome is
to Rome and all those
Vatican.
places, and
Vatican
seen-
City.
Yeah, seen the Vatican.
Most
and
of what I
everything.
know about
But-
the papacy comes from the Total War game franchise. And I just
So
know
it's
that
pretty
if you lay
solid.
siege to the Vatican, and you have a large Catholic population, that goes poorly for your civil unrest. So
There were some really cool wars and fights in history where I think the Vatican City was besieged. It was pretty amazing.
Really?
Yeah,
I'd be
there's
here
some
for
really
that
cool
conversation.
fun things in history within. I think it's I don't know if it was other Catholics or if it was other Christians. I don't know.
There were like
But it
papal
was insane.
states, right? Like actually, like there were like princes of the Catholic, bishop princes of the Catholic Church until like 1870.
Interesting.
Like Salzburg in Austria was like the fiefdom of a cardinal. Like they were like Catholic princes. Like that's how they viewed it's a whole thing, man. So
Right.
Can a woman
the
become
Pope
a
is the
pope?
king of the Catholics, huh?
No.
Can a woman
can't
become
become
a
a
pope?
priest, bishop, cardinal,
Negative,
or anything
Ghost
like
Rider.
that? No.
Unless
They
you
can't be
saw-
any of that stuff.
Unless
Well,
you
I was
saw
gonna say,
Conclave.
spoiler alert!
But that was after the fact, and it was by mistake. And if you're here, I'm just saying,
by
if you're
mistake.
here and you're Catholic and you're like, these guys are dumb Protestants, they don't know anything about Catholics, they're
Come
just
on the
talking off the
podcast
top
and
of their
let's talk
head.
about it.
I would argue and counter, have you seen the show? Because that's what we do, okay? So, anyway,
I'm just learning things
reserve
as I
the
like
right to
Google
correct myself.
alongside this conversation, because one of the things the Pope can do to address Nick's point is he can deliver ex cathedra
Ex cathedra.
statements, which are supposed
From
to
the
be
throne.
on par with scriptural authority.
It's the same as if God says it.
It's one of
wow.
the main heresies of the papacy that Protestants
Right.
object to.
Which is why they don't do it very often.
Which I just found out Pope Francis never did it.
Oh, cool.
Ever.
probably
He never.
for good reason.
Well,
Because I think most of the Catholics would have been, based on things that he said, most Catholics would not have been behind him on a lot of the things he
which
said.
means that a lot of the like really progressive stuff that he said and all that stuff is essentially subject to the same
Okay.
criticism and questioning.
So
as
to
any other
baseline, hold on, Josh,
clergy.
real quick. So to baseline for people at home who are listening. So one of the things, what we're talking about here is this. So Pope Francis wasn't even, he was a divisive figure in the Catholic Church at large. And to tie this back to what Josh was talking about earlier, this is what's going on. The Catholic Church was hemorrhaging people up into COVID. And just like the broader, large churches, denominational churches in the U.S. across the board, right? Everybody was. The bigger problem for the Catholics was priests. They were having a very, very hard time getting new priests. And if you don't have priests, you can't have parish. Like you're not going to have like churches. They're like bringing people into American dioceses. They were having to pull priests in from the Latin American countries, from the African countries where young men where
Places where
Catholicism.
they don't touch little boys.
Yes, that also played into that as well. And so now what you have though is, as we've been talking, as the zeitgeist has kind of swung, the pendulum swung the other way, Christianity is becoming more popular. So a lot of people in America who identify as Christian grew up in a lot of people grew up Protestant in America because that's predominantly outnumber the Catholics generally speaking. And so if you grew up, especially in the Bible Belt in the South, a lot of people grew up in this, more vanilla, non-denom Baptist, Baptist-costal background, left the church and are now like, I want to get back into it. And so they fall for what a lot of people have kind of gone into, which is the fallacy of like, the water that's further upstream is the purest from the source. So they start looking into all this stuff and they're like, I want to go back to like the liturgy. I want to go to like the early church. What's the oldest expression of Christianity? I'm going to start there. And so this is very interesting because those people, the new people who have been coming into Catholicism and some of the old holdovers, have a problem with Francis because Francis was not a conservative hardliner. He was doing things to expand and to open Catholicism. He was talking about things like Christianity being the privileged route, being way more ecumenical than previous Catholics, especially.
Tell them what you mean by
from that
ecumenical, because a lot of
That's a good
accommodating to other faiths, right?
universalism, like
Universalism,
basically.
yeah.
More unity based.
Yeah, like finding common down. Like when he would go and speak, he wouldn't necessarily speak from a Christian perspective. He would speak on universal principles that would be applicable to other faiths, and he would make those direct parallels. He would be like,
Speaking of, I have a
very
clip
Mother
where he kind of does
Teresa
that. If you guys like to
vibes.
see it.
yeah, let's see
Yeah,
it.
let's see
This is a
that
perfect
clip.
example.
All right, let me know if you guys can hear this.
Yep.
Oh, I'm gonna retch.
Off to a great start.
On this final day in Singapore, September 13th, concluding his trip to Asia and the Pacific, Pope Francis spoke to young people at an interreligious gathering.
Tutte le religioni sono un cammino per arrivare a Dio.
Because every religion is a way to arrive at God.
Well, straight one.
Dirò una comparazione. Sono diverse lingue, diversi idiomi per arrivare lì.
Sort of a comparison, an example would be they're sort of like different languages in order to arrive at God.
Interesting.
Ma Dio è Dio per tutti.
But God is God for all.
E come Dio è Dio per tutti, noi siamo tutti figli di Dio.
And if God is God for all, then we're all sons and daughters of God.
Straight
Ma
two.
il mio Dio è più importante
This makes me
del
want to
tuo.
speak Italian.
My God is more important than your God.
Yeah, nobody does
That's the
heresy
only thing he
like
said
the
right.
Italians.
Is that
But he's. Oh wait.
C'è un solo Dio lì. E noi sono idiomi, cammino, lingue per arrivare a Dio.
There's only one God, and each of us is a language, so to speak, in order to arrive at God.
Qualcuno è
Straight
schivo,
three.
qualcuno
Get him outta
è
here.
musulmano, qualcuno
Muslim,
hindi, qualcuno cristiano, ma
Hindu,
sono
Christian.
diversi cammini.
They're different paths.
All right, I've heard
And
enough.
halt. I've heard enough. We need a-
irony of the Pope. Like the whole shtick of the entire Catholic Church was being the one true church and the only,
Right.
not the only not that even that Jesus was the only path to God, but that path ran straight through the Catholic
through
Church
Rome.
clergy. So
That's
like
right.
the fact that it swung so
Yes.
far
See,
the other side. Is,
I wasn't, when you said ecumenical, I've always understood that term to be like evangelical faiths, ecumenical, but
No.
like ecumenical to all religions.
Yes.
That's
It's-
like,
well,
it probably
oh yeah,
it's
does
been
end
used-
up meaning
it's
that
been
a lot
used-
in America. Yeah,
Because
Right.
we
And
don't
the
do that.
ecumenical
We
councils
don't
between the
have
Eastern
interrelig-
Orthodox
Hold on.
and the Catholics, they do have ecumenical councils, which both parties kind of hold to. So the word itself just means like a community or
Intercouncil,
being
yeah,
nice
so-
to intercouncil. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like the whole point is this. That's the reason it has that connotation is because we don't do things like this. Like,
Right.
generally speaking, we use it in the chaplaincy a lot because I work in we call it an ecumenical environment where we have multiple denominations and
Yes.
religious faiths, right? So it's a pluralistic ecumenical environment. But this kind of thing is different. Like the idea, to Tim's point, I don't want to lose that because that is at the center of my frustration, is this is the same people that would refuse me communion and then sit there and say, hey, we're all just speaking a different language, man. Like all roads lead to God.
unless
and
you're
I'm like,
speaking a slightly oppositional version of it directly to them, then
Yeah.
you're an like it cuts off the notion of excommunication at the knees entirely. So you were talking about some cardinal that was denied the Eucharist, or that he said should be denied? Is that what you said?
Yeah, well, he did it to
Anderson?
Biden, but which I was okay with because his justification was based
Oh,
on
I thought
actual
you had said
biblical.
the cardinal was being cut off from the
No,
Pope, and
no,
I
no,
was
no,
like,
no.
Okay.
He was
The-
disciplined by the
Cardinal
Pope.
he was disciplined by the Pope
He's-
essentially.
Right. It's
Stripped
like
of certain rights and stuff.
because
I gotcha.
Yeah, because he had said that because Biden supported what's it called, legislation and things that for abortion, that he was therefore he couldn't take communion.
Yeah,
and I just saw a clip on.
If I believed in that, I would 100% be on board with that decision.
Right.
It's like you can't endorse the slaughter of innocents and then come and receive like.
I just saw a clip, and I wish I might pull it up later, or we're going to do it in our Reacts video. But it was a guy talking about the reason that we have Catholic schools in America. The reason that Catholic schools exist in America is because the Bible was being taught in public schools, and the Catholics didn't want their kids being taught heresy. So they made it to where they had, if you were to be a member to get stay in the Catholic Church, you had to put your kids into the Catholic schools. And if your kids were not in Catholic schools, the bishop of that diocese could refuse you communion over it.
What?
Like that was the policy of the church. So like,
do they offer a discount?
Now here's the interesting
I
thing.
feel like they have a trend of doing that. Like, here's the way to get into heaven.
That's exactly right. And so, what
If
there's been
you're
a counter to
wrong,
this.
We'll give you a chance.
Yeah, pay up.
So if you look at when Vatican II,
Spanish Inquisition.
exactly. Josh, when was Vatican II?
Dude, that's a proper.
Vatican II was in the 1960s.
That's
So
the first
1965.
Christian pyramid
Yeah.
scheme. I've been
It
looking
is.
for one.
No,
Trying to come up with one.
that is it.
Here's an
It puts
interesting
people.
Point. Oh,
Go
sorry.
ahead.
Go finish your point. I'm sorry.
So yeah, I mean that's the modus operandi, right? It's like, and this has been my principal argument against. I mean, within the Protestant tradition, while I talk about hierarchical structures and different church structures and why it kind of matters, it's less of an issue for us because it's not as divisive of an issue because you can't really make the biblical case that the Catholics are trying to make. And the problem that the Catholics are trying to do is they're taking this whole notion of apostolic succession and the establishment of the church and the papal seat under Peter, and they're saying that these things are established and ordained by God as part of the new covenant. But what they don't deal with and they don't address is how that directly undermines things that were explicitly taught by Jesus, which are things like a priesthood of believers and how, hey, I'm going to tear down this temple and I'm going to rebuild it again in 3 days. And, and the same
veil
reason
being
that
torn and
and the whole idea of a deconstruction of the barrier of putting other people between God, being subject to one another as opposed to under that. Like there is still authority and we're under the authority of God and the Word.
It is kind of
believers.
A recreation of the Old Testament
It
Levitical order, right? Which I never really thought about but it's ironic to.
It is. That's what I laugh about.
When Stephen goes up in front of the Sanhedrin and preaches to him, he goes through their whole history, and then he kind of makes this point that you've made an idol out of the temple, and this Jesus that you crucified is the way. If you do not follow this Christ that came, that you crucified, who is God, there is no other way. They got mad at him because they said, he said these things, but they didn't stone him until he said in his vision, I see Christ standing at the right hand of the Father, which is interesting because in Daniel 7, it says, they're one like a son of man coming in the clouds, which is what divine beings do. They come in the clouds, and they will be seated at the right hand of the Father and will be given authority. That hadn't happened in Daniel 7. He was seeing this thing play out. What Stephen did is when he saw it, the work had been done. It had been complete. Christ was at the right hand of the Father, and that's why they stoned him, because he basically said he is a deity. He is God.
And this is
equal with the Father.
And this is what is insane to me. And this is why I think this is going to be a particularly interesting conclave. And I think it will be that for exactly the reason that you brought up earlier. The shift in sentiment. People are not looking for relativism. They want someone to stand and proclaim prophetically, thus saith the Lord. And so what draws people to Catholicism, what draws people to the higher liturgical churches is their uncompromising proclamation of their values and their beliefs, whether or not they're right or wrong. And because at least then, even as a person who's objectively saying, at least I can know that what you're telling me, you believe that, and that everywhere I go, they follow those same things. So even if there's things that I disagree with, I can say, like Starbucks. Starbucks makes a mediocre cup of coffee, but they make that same mediocre cup of coffee everywhere in the world. So no matter where I go, I can get a mediocre cup of coffee. Compare that to Protestantism, where it's like you go and you're like, maybe they're going to be preaching the word, and maybe they'll be handling snakes.
Protestantism,
you know, like I don't know.
Protestantism. It's all like it's like pizza, right?
And that's what's appealing to somebody who's coming in off the street. And so the church is responding to this. I think this is going to be a really big deal. I think this conclave is going to be a really big thing.
I don't know if that holds water, though, because you still have a lot of different flavors of Catholic, just because they technically have the same forms and rituals and, like, source, material, homilies and whatnot. They obviously, like, you could have somebody like the Pope or Pope Francis saying those things, and then you can have somebody like your Cardinal Burke saying the opposite thing. So I don't know that justification
I agree.
for the attractiveness to Catholicism is because of homogeneity.
We know that, though.
And
but
they all
line up. They all line up when it comes to like the because what you're talking about is differences in translations, differences in actions. They don't disagree with the core tenets of Catholicism.
If they have dogma.
No matter
They don't disagree on the
traditionalists
dogma.
or liberals.
Well,
they have the specific.
Okay,
and
I'm pretty sure part of their dogma would include Jesus being the way to the Father.
Okay, so to be fair,
I mean,
there are criticisms. There are criticisms.
I mean, I agree.
Pope
with
Francis that said that, and you're. Let me play devil's advocate because, a lot of Catholics like Trent Horn released a video and said this is horrible. They need to go out and release a statement to clarify. And after that statement, he made those statements. They translated the transcript of like what he actually said as seems like all religions seem to lead to God, not really, right?
No.
So they kind of changed it around to make it seem lighter, but ultimately a statement needed to be made that never was. And so this is where, but here's the thing. The way that they look at, say, Peter was corrected by Paul, right? They look, if Peter was the Pope, he was corrected by Paul. So, a Pope is just a fallible human being, but they can make an authoritative, statement, but those are rare, few, far between, and so it becomes more of a political office about the direction of things. They're not going to, so like the things that are secondary issues, because like we think about primary issues, secondary issues being like the Eucharist is salvation and the sacraments, and you have to. Secondary issues are can you bless an LGBTQ couple, right? I mean, so those are some of the things they're arguing about, where they say we disagree with that, but you're not disagreeing with the core tenets.
Yes, and I would, to answer what you were saying to Tim, the average person doesn't really know a lot about the intra-denominational or the squabbling within Catholicism. Most people, like Vatican II, like I know a lot of Catholics that have a beef with Vatican II, which is
Vatican
basically
II? I don't even know what that means.
Josh, go ahead.
So Vatican II is around the 1960s. They basically went towards a more ecumenical approach to other religions and to other Christians, and said basically there was no dialogue before with other Christian denominations like Protestants. Now there is dialogue. There are some things that
when you use the word ecumenical in this context, it was just Christian.
No,
context, not Hindu as well. Not.
It's opening it up to saying that there are it's essentially akin to saying all truth is God truth.
That's
right. So they're saying if there are truths in other religions and we can acknowledge the truths in other religions, which I mean, it's like okay, but ultimately they opened up because Catholicism was a closed door before Vatican II, and Catholics call me out, correct me if I'm wrong, but before Vatican II, you literally could not have a Catholic marriage unless you were Catholic.
Well, and the closed door was really important because if it's open, what are you supposed to nail your beefs with the Catholic Church to?
Right? So you have to 95 of them, right?
Let me specify this, Nick.
You go up with the hammer, just keep opening the door.
Ecumenical means the actual definition.
We've defined it. I understand. We've just
okay.
Well, hold on. My question is: we would agree it's a good thing for Christians and Catholics to get along, and would we say that we will see some, if not all, of our Catholic brothers and sisters in heaven?
Yes, I agree with that statement.
So was Vatican II saying a little bit more of that? Like we should be able to break bread more together, or is this that clip we watched, which is like any religion goes, we're just speaking different languages, let's all play in the same sandbox?
The detractors would say, the people who were against Vatican II would say that was what opened the door from going from ecumenical to pluralist,
the argument is that
like to full blown universalism.
And it's meant to sound like the acceptable one to people who would prefer that. And it's also meant to sound like universalism to the people who would prefer that. And you see a lot of that. That's your classic, like, Rob Bell caliber universalism is his talent for not saying anything, really, but saying things that can be kind of justified if you want to interpret. As you say, oh, no, he's not a universalist. You can pick some quotes and say blah, blah, but if you want to say he is universalist, you can find those too. And it's like, okay, but did he really say anything? And so that dual meaning is not accidental. It is intentional.
But there's some of the changes within
open that door.
Some of the changes after that Vatican II did that were noticeable right in the parishes where it used to be all Latin liturgies, and now it's spoken in the common language, which I'm not against. Then you had the presentation of the Eucharist was directed, essentially and taken towards the altar, and now the priest can turn around and take the Eucharist towards the congregation.
Pope
so
Francis
it
banned
changes
the
and
Latin
shifts
Mass
the focus
outright as well.
So there was a big movement called the Society of St. Pius X. So SSPX is what it's called, and these are the Catholics, and I've seen a lot of them online. And I know, right? And these guys are the anti-Vatican II Catholics that are like, let's go back to the origins.
The old
started
ways.
in the 1970s, and they were actually all excommunicated, and wasn't until Pope Benedict in 2009 added them back to, but they were, were given restrictions on what kind of sacraments they can do. So there was some sort of discipline that would happen in that.
All right,
but
so
if I there were some people that
one of those
deviated from that.
Mm-hmm. If I joined a society like the SSPX, like if I could, get past the gatekeeping, could I then accurately claim that I have been excommunicated from the Catholic Church? Is that
by proxy?
Technically accurate?
I suppose. I don't know.
They're
back in now. They're back in.
You got to have the resume. Kicked out of countries, excommunicated from the Catholic Church.
That's right.
But here's the point. So we digress. So here's the issue, right? So things that are going to be interesting about this. So like one, there's already two kind of parties really within the Catholic Church that are kind of splintering, and a lot of the new blood that's coming in anecdotally, and I can just say this even from what I see in ministry with young men here in the military, is a lot of the people coming in are attracted to the more the old world memes, the Catholic imagery, the saints, the whole, like, the lore, right? The Catholic Church has lore, and that's what they're after, right? And that's what, when you come into a Protestant church, what you get is, youth group, but more boring. Like, that's how a lot of young men and women feel when they come to church. And so, on its face, there's a lot of draw. So I think I would be very interested to see how this conclave plays out. I would expect to see a more conservative pope.
Really?
Because
you think there's a chance at that?
I think there is. And the reason I say that is they're not stupid. They need young men, and they're having a moment right now where they have a boatload of young men.
And we've been trying to pretend like that's not true.
Let me rephrase this, and I don't mean it in a negative way. I'm saying, that's what I'm getting at. They want to meet those recruiting goals. They need men in the priesthood. They want to capitalize on the inspiration, and they would be, and they have to know this. Like, the Catholics are big on data too. Like, they will see this and probably want to capitalize on it in the same way. So yeah, I would be very surprised if we don't see that.
They really need somebody that can do some analytics on their marketing ROI for Catholicism. So
there might be a market there. But Jude Law's, listen, if you haven't seen it, and it's totally heretical and it's heretical garbage, but the sentiment is Jude Law's the young pope. Like, that is what I think a lot of Catholics would, on that side would want to see. Like, this dude comes in and they're like, oh, he's so great. And then he goes like hard right. And he's like, bring out the papal tiara. And he speaks ex cathedra. It's the whole thing. If you haven't watched those clips, there's some pretty funny clips with Jude Law. It was an HBO series called The Young Pope. And Jude Law basically, like, because we haven't had a young pope in forever, right? So here's a guy in his like, you know, late 30s, 40s who becomes pope, Jude Law, and he's like, and he goes hard. Like, he brings all the cardinals in, makes them like kiss his feet.
Show.
There's some really interesting, like the papal tiara. Josh, you might be able to pull up a screenshot or something. But like the scene where he gets coronated or whatever, or however, what, I don't know the nomenclature. If you're a Catholic, you can comment in below. But yeah, that's the whole. Yeah, Jude Law is the young pope. Maybe this will be the thumbnail. But
oh gosh,
yeah, it's between that and the next piece. So anyway, so that was that piece.
Dude, where's
Go ahead.
Shia Buff in the running? Could he become Pope?
No.
Actually, so here's the thing.
That would be
There's always the chance of a
wild.
wild card pope.
Oh, I vote
Because
Shia Buff
in the papal conclave of 1334,
Even Stevens,
the
baby.
Hold
College
on,
of
listen.
Cardinals, the College of Cardinals was much, much smaller, and so it was pretty common to like do some throwaway ballots to test the temperature, see where people were at, see who had support, and they ended up on like the first ballot electing a cardinal solely because he just happened to be the throwaway vote for a majority of the cardinals. Yeah, because he was just he was kind of an unremarkable, not wealthy guy, and so they were like they're reading and you can't take it back, so they just go through the ballots, and I guess
because it's ordered and divinely decided by God, right?
Yeah,
Dude, bring
and
up
so
that
it's like,
picture.
Well, Benedict XII, that's who we get now, because we all thought he definitely would never be pope, and so
Yeah. No, that's
stranger
hilarious.
things have happened.
That is true. So that's what I'm saying. Bring up that picture of papal tiara. Dude, look at this. Look at
That's
this.
sick.
That's Jude Law, and he makes them bring back this like it's like the Pope hat, but for if you're just listening, this is like the armored, super elaborate Pope hat. They call it like the papal tiara.
They probably still have that though.
Oh, that's a thing. It's a real thing.
But I
You're
feel like
telling
that
me
would be
that we've had
so
all
holy
these
hand
popes
grenade.
and none of them broke that out for like any occasion?
Dude,
Oh,
that's
yeah,
what I'm
that's
talking about.
legit.
That's it. That's the thumbnail right there. Next Pope, more conservative? Question mark.
So much hate,
That's it.
dude. We're gonna
Let's
get so much hate
go.
if we put this on the
No.
thumbnail.
Listen, that's it. That's
that
the one.
over my
Give
suggestion
the man a
of Shia
chance
LaBeouf
24
as the next
hours
Pope.
to be passed.
I like Shia too. We can put all of them in there. It'll be like next Pope question mark, and we'll have a litany. Anyway, comment down below who you think the option is. But no, I mean, could Shia? Yeah, possibly. That'd be crazy. I doubt it.
I
but-
mean, I don't even know how that works in the running. I do say, knowing
can't.
very little compared to the three of you, I mean, with the movement of cultural Christianity, with the way that we see things going, with the amount of young men voting that voted in this election, I was just listening to a podcast about how Trump got like 56% of the young men. And I don't know. I mean, like the age of old, dead, and dying leaders. It'd be nice to see, you know,
Young
the
blood.
resurrection of some vital young blood who can
Yeah.
Yeah.
lead well.
I feel like this happened with the Restless Reformed movement, the Gospel Coalition of the early 2000s with John Piper, John MacArthur, Matt Chandler, all of them, all these people that came to faith because they saw the masculinity and the strength of the Reformed kind of theology.
Dude, that was the whole Mars
And
Hill
they
thing.
had this, absolutely, and they were part of that whole Acts 29. The whole movement was very kind of reformed, very structured, very masculine, things like that, and so people flocked to that. So I definitely see that if the Catholic Church wants to recruit people, the world is shifting in that direction, and so they need to elect a pope that's going to be at least ecumenical to that type of theology or that type of stance, and
amiable,
really even promote it. Like honestly,
I mean,
all
they
that
can
the
still
pope needs,
charter nightly orders. Like,
right?
I'm just saying, there's
honestly, I would
options.
reconsider if I could be
Dude,
I could join
we could be knights?
the hospitalers, dude.
Is that what you're saying?
right?
That would be
Yeah,
awesome.
the
Can we
Hospitallers, the
can we bring
Teutonics, the
knights back?
Templars.
That'd be
Bro,
amazing.
we need to do an episode on knights, man. We got to
Sure,
do that.
we'll do a
good idea.
chivalry
They were-
episode.
They were
That's
so
a good
awesome.
idea.
Anyway, but
Here's the real
that's
question, Josh.
That's the direction that it would go. I'm actually.
I agree.
nervous
But,
about
I am
but
not
here's the real.
as optimistic as you guys. I think we're gonna get another
Female pope.
aging liberal. Dude, if they could get away with it, there's a wing of them that would 100% put one in. Don't.
Well,
Well, you have
pretend
to
like
get a
there's
young
the
one
thing.
because just to be you got to be I mean, the way the normal thing works, you
here's
got to be a.
the-
John
definitely
Paul was
I mean, a cardinal.
58.
Sorry.
John Paul was 58. Okay, so the fact that between him there was Benedict, who was really old, and then there was, or Ratzinger, I guess was his pre-popish name. I don't remember what Francis's pre-pope name was.
You can't dead name
both
popes.
of them were
I don't
very
think that's legal.
old when they were elected pope, and I think the reasoning for that was because they were kind of, I think there's been that tension in the Catholic Church for a while, and by electing someone old, it was kind of like saying, we'll revisit this in 10 or 15 years, rather than we're going to have the same guy for the next 40, which is, you know, what it would like. Because
I think that's definitely a part of the calculus. I mean, it kind of has to be. It's like Supreme Court justices. It's a lifetime appointment.
Like just like in politics, the left tends to go and forfeit the moral, like are more moral ambiguous to like decisions making and fairness and things. I wonder if the left or the liberal versions of Catholicism and the people in power in the Vatican have really established and entrenched. Am I talking about the deep state or the deep Vatican? Yes, I am.
Vatican.
Potentially preventing
they have
kind of
catacombs.
conservative
They have
value.
a literal deep Vatican.
They do.
They do.
Have a deep Vatican.
Deep Vatican.
But here's the thing. Can I just make this statement? Because I think just like all it took for the racial unrest in 2014 with Trayvon Martin, all it took for all of that to happen was for Barack Obama to say, oh, he looks like he could have been my son. Like, that's all it took, and so all we need really is a Catholic Pope that says, well, you know, men are leaving. I think we need to not disrespect men in society. And then suddenly you have play the Kingdom of Heaven and the March of
which gets to
against Saladin.
Which gets to the real question, which is, did J.D. Vance kill the Pope?
The last political figure to be seen with the Pope before his passing. Are we going to get doxxed on YouTube because of that
I
comment?
woke up, and the first thing I saw on X was just uncaptioned without anything, this photo of J.D. Vance doing like the thumbs, like get out of here thing from the State of the Union when they kicked out and I was like, why is this random picture being posted? And then I saw the him meeting with the Pope right before, like, the day of his death or something, and I was
the
like,
day before. He died in the morning. I think he died at like 7 something this morning in Europe, so it would have been late last night. But so like the day after, like the morning after Easter.
We say these are powerful omens.
Yeah, it's just very like I was talking about how I got up this morning and I see that the news that the Pope has died, and then sometime probably like 8 or 9 o'clock, maybe it might have been closer to 10, like the White House or the Vice President's office had posted, so great to travel to the Vatican and meet with the Pope, and I was just like, do they know? I don't know if they know. Have they read the news before posting this morning? Like,
oh my god,
it's interesting, but. Yeah, it is. That's part of what's crazy about this, though, is that you're coming out of Easter, which is obviously a huge deal. If you watch the footage, though, of the Pope's address, that dude was not there. Like they had.
Really?
Oh man, yeah.
Did you see Trump's Easter stuff? That was a big deal.
Fantastic.
I was impressed with
cool.
a lot of that. Apparently, that's like the first time that's ever been done. Apparently, that's not a normal presidential thing to do.
Yeah, normally they used to just go to church on Sundays.
Yeah.
Like actually host an Easter
event
celebration at the White House, event at the White House.
Yeah, that's what the Easter.
we generally
that wasn't all about Easter eggs.
Yeah, right. No, I agree. No, you're right. It was a big deal. It is a big deal. I mean, even I just saw. I mean, I think a bunch of Liberty kids went and sang at the White House. I saw Charles Billingsley and
Charles was there.
Some folks that
Johnny
were there.
Moore was there.
Yeah,
Tim Clinton was there.
What is Johnny Moore doing?
I haven't heard that name in a
Media
long
company.
time. What is he
Is
up
he really?
to?
Yeah,
Running a media company that just
Running
got
a media
acquired by a bigger media company.
So not pastoring then?
Oh, he hasn't been for a long time.
Okay,
But like he's a part of
that's the only
like
part
the
I care about.
Faith Alliance something
That's
of all
cool.
the White House stuff.
I'm just kidding.
We're the OG LU people that remember
That's
all
right.
that.
The Johnny Moore. It's so interesting. I don't know.
Johnny,
It's hard.
come on the episode, bro.
Yeah, come on, man.
Come on the show.
I'm just kidding.
I'll send this to one of his employees who can send
Please
it to him.
do. No, Johnny, man, that's what's crazy. Like I see Johnny Moore and stuff, and I was like, you're there. He was really dynamic. I mean, he preached a lot. I mean, he did most of the preaching when Doc didn't preach back when we were in school.
Oh yeah, 100%.
But like when Jerry Senior didn't preach.
No, we were there. We can call him Doc.
I know.
That's
I'm
our
saying
word.
this for the general
For those
public
that don't know.
who Doc is. But
I came after the fact.
yeah,
I came,
yeah.
So it's a good
So
reference.
it's okay.
For me.
But he, but yeah, Johnny Moore was always it's one of those people where it's like, he had like lots of things he wanted to do. So it was very interesting to see like, I was like, yeah, I was campus pastor for a season. Because he wasn't pastor. He never pastored a church. Like, or did he? I don't even know if he did. He might have
no
before.
idea.
It'd be interesting to know.
So. I have
Well,
no
Johnny
idea.
Moore, if you hear this, we'd love to talk to you, man. Come on. Anyway, we move on. We digress. So all that to say, yeah, crazy. And then the Jubilee thing this year.
What does that mean?
Yeah, what is that about? I heard you mention
It's like it's a thing that happens every.
So is it a specific
in the Old Testament, you
Catholic
had-
season, or is it like a church calendar?
That's what I
season?
don't know. It
It's-
was a church thing back in the old days, like in Jewish time. I don't know when the
Okay.
Catholics established
Every
it, so that's
7
why I
years.
need to look. So did that was
What
what
does
happened,
it
Josh?
mean
Did they
for
just
them?
continue it?
I
I'm
don't
still
know.
waiting.
I don't know. Sorry.
Okay,
What's the
so
question?
if it's the same as the Jewish one, then yeah, every 7 years, and like debts would be repaid. So like you couldn't basically hold debt for longer than 7 years because every 7 years,
Oh, got
it's
it,
like
got it,
it's
got it.
wiped
Slaves
clean.
were freed. And
Slaves were
things
freed.
like that,
These
yeah.
types of things. So like it was kind of like a reset. So big cause for celebration. I don't know what that means for the Catholic Church, other than a lot of people pilgrimage to Rome for it, and they do a bunch of stuff at the Vatican. There's like a door that gets sealed and unsealed. There's a bunch of other symbolic or we would call it symbolic. Maybe they do. I don't know. Whatever. If you're Catholic and you know more about this than we do, please, by all means, drop it in the comments. Tell us why it's important.
We've had some Catholic listeners, quite a few.
We
hopping into
do,
the comments I've seen.
and some of them that have great comments and that have been faithful listeners. So please don't.
You should
please
see if
don't,
one of your Catholic chaplain buddies will come on and
Oh, I can
help
do
us
that.
lend a
be fun.
machete to our intellectual thicket of the ecumenical.
Well,
like,
See,
I have
but
questions.
Catholics are like, so imagine being a Catholic chaplain. It's kind of like me. Like, there's things that I can't talk about, right? Like, I can't disparage
When
federal
you talk
government.
about Catholicism,
You're right.
that's the main gray area we find ourselves in.
No, but I'm saying if you bring
Catholicism is
a
important.
Catholic priest who also happens to be a chaplain, like, they have constraints about what they can say, just like about the church,
interesting.
in the same way that I do about like the military.
We're gonna end up just start talking about baseball. That's about all the topics that we can
Correct.
talk about on this podcast.
No, this is the
Like,
perfect moment though, because if there's no pope, you're not bucking any. You know,
But
as
no,
long
it's like
as-
military. All previous policies remain in effect. Like that's the little statement. Every change of command they say.
No, this is the
backdating.
moment where the Cardinals have like their kegger between popes, right? No rules, all bets are off.
I just imagine this image of these.
That's
these
why
80,
they elect
70,
such
80-year-old
old
guys upside down drinking from a can.
No, my goodness. Anyway,
Anyway,
so
man,
No
I'll
Catholic
tell you
is
what
gonna
though.
come on this show.
Speaking of the Catholics in the military, Josh, that was one of the things that I encountered when I was at Chipolik. There were a
that's
handful of
chaplain
Catholics,
basic course.
and
for those of you who don't know,
and so they were, gosh, they were suffering. The Catholics in the army were suffering. Like there just wasn't enough priests that were being recruited. Have you seen a
Dude.
difference there? Have
Yeah.
you started to get
What-
more and more priests?
no, like that's what I'm trying to tell you. Like the reason that we don't have a lot of Catholic priests in the army is because there's not a lot of priests in general, and and Rome has to release them
Approve
to
them.
come
Yep.
into approve them through the archdiocese and the military. So like the military has its own diocese. So like they have like a bishop who basically is in charge of all of the priests who are assigned to serve in the chaplaincy. And that's their endorser. They're just like I have an endorser through Liberty Baptist Fellowship. And so yeah, they're hurting because of that exact reason. And Catholic priests, unlike us, like I guess it could happen from us too. Like our endorsers can pull our endorsement,
Right.
and then we'd have to go find another one, or find a different church to endorse us, or we
How
would
does-
have to get out of the military.
How does Catholic chaplaincy compare in terms of like numbers, and how does that compare to like Orthodox? Are there many Orthodox, or is that
Not
because that's
many.
obviously a little
see-
more?
We are
The
so
only Orthodox
Protestant.
guy
So the
that
Christians
I saw
are
was
winning.
from
Yeah.
Serbia.
Now we do have them.
Yeah,
Like
it's
we
awesome.
have, so we have actually a married Catholic priest here. So he was married. I think he was Anglican, and then he became Catholic. After the fact. So he's married, and he's here. And then we have Orthodox. So one of my very good family friends here is Romanian Orthodox priest. So we have them. There's not many of them. The vast majority of us are Protestant, low church, as opposed to like Anglicans and Presbyterians and those. And then all of the other Christian denominations, then the Catholics, and then all the other, we have Muslims and
they still give the
I was
Muslims
trying
the cross,
to-
which I have a problem with.
When Hughes lived up the street from me and he was becoming a chaplain, and we can cut this if this is not acceptable to say in the general public,
go ahead.
But I was trying to, because the Eastern Orthodox, they'll do like the blessing of the arms. So like you'll find videos of the Orthodox, having the censer over the pile of AK-47s. And I was like, you could, I mean, for like a small surcharge, like if I could just click a box when I'm on Palmetto State Army, like strictly speaking, I would rather my armaments be blessed. Right. Just
What about ammo? Can you
I would
have
be
ammo
lying.
blessed?
I would be lying if I said, listen, there's nothing that says I can't pray over weapons, and I do. All right, I don't have to be Orthodox
Lord,
to do
make
that.
me fast and
like
accurate.
I would stand at the head of the convoys, like as our convoys and stuff will go out for training and we're loading out, and I'd stand there and I'd pray over the vehicles as they left because they need it. These are 18 to 20-year-olds hopped up on Zin and hung over that are driving multi-ton, military equipment with.
Dude, you just need to get a
That's what I'm
chaplain
saying.
staff that you hold
just
above
put a
your
couple
head
things-
when you went to
yeah.
battle.
Do you know we have an award?
Yes.
It's the award of Aaron and Her. You know that, right? It's like one of our awards that we have, which are Aaron and I think it's right, Aaron and Her.
Is it
Yeah, anyway,
Caleb?
the guys that hold the Caleb. No, it's not.
Whatever it was.
But
I don't know.
anyway,
No,
it's-
it's-
yeah, they hold up the
describe
arms.
that. What is that?
It's an
So-
award that they give for supporting ministry. It's the guys who stand behind Moses and hold his arm, because as long as his arms were raised, Israel would
Do they
continue
give
to
you
be
a thing to
victorious.
hold, though?
Oh no,
Like,
no,
do
they
you
just give
actually
you a
get a-
medal. No, it would be cool if you got stuff.
Oh.
I think that'd be a way more appropriate.
You need you need like a like the scepter, like of the style that like the British monarchy
Yes.
has. Something.
Yeah. We used to have those. The field marshal's baton. It's what it's called. The field marshal's baton.
This is exactly the reason why the low church, as you called it, is losing to some of the high liturgy
No
and
style
Orthodox
points.
because right.
We
And
don't
there's no
style
have the
reason
points.
we can't
accoutrements.
have that. We can have scepters. We can have
can.
censors of it. Like these are symbols that have meaning. You just don't
That's
imbue
true.
them with
Listen, we have Bible Man.
What?
No, you're right. That's the same.
It's on
That's
brand.
better. I don't even know what that is.
Exactly. Josh does. Anyway,
Oh my god!
you're right. You're right. And this is really what this all comes down
Take
to.
VeggieTales over Bible Man.
Listen, this is what it all comes down to: is that we're jealous
Saying something.
of all of this. Like, we want our own
That's
nation.
true. That's
of,
very true. I am
like,
jealous.
Our own state. We want access to that. So the only answer here, the real takeaway, and if you stuck with us this long, this is what I'm praying for:
You're a true believer.
Reformation. Okay, open the doors and let the Catholic Church be Catholic again, which is to say, universal in nature, and bring us all into the fold. Right.
Well,
so
if they
we
change
can all,
their theology,
and if
but
it's
here's
your
the thing, bro.
it's their
Here's the
Bible. They
thing.
say they put
You
it
let-
together.
Well, okay, let's. But this is exactly why this is my fear, because all throughout history, and you're starting to see this happen again, is when the Catholics start getting brave, they start cutting out tongues of people who don't disagree, that don't agree with their theology. Okay,
Let me tell you about my friend Zwingli. Okay.
Look, man, you've already convinced me. You can stop selling. Okay.
It's not you I'm trying to convince. It's all of you.
they're gonna anyway.
Anyway,
That's the thing,
we
like,
love you.
The Catholics. So this is what funny thing that in my observation of the Catholic apologists, and if you're Catholic, I really honestly agree with me or disagree with me, but just notice this, okay? When you see a Catholic apologist online, he does about maybe 10-15% of evangelism to atheists, and he does about 90 to 80% of evangelism to Protestants to bring them back into the fold. It
right.
just seems backwards to me. So it's like reach the lost, guys, not the.
In fairness,
not
the Protestants
secondary
also spend
issue.
85% of their time trying to bring
true.
Protestants back into the fold. So
That's true.
You're not wrong.
That is true.
You're not wrong. Well, hey, listen, if you stuck
you
with
gotta
us this
fish where the
long,
fish are, man. That's all I'm saying.
you're right. Thanks for tuning in.
Oh my gosh.
We want to know what you think about this, this whole situation with the Pope's death. Do you agree with us? Do you think we're going to see a conservative Pope? Do you think we're going to see a more liberal Pope? Do you think we might see no Pope? What do we think? We want to know what your thoughts are. Again, for our Catholic brethren, we love you. A lot of this is just in jest and having a good time discussing this, but we do recognize.
Come on the show. We have questions.
Yeah, we do. Listen, but we do recognize, and I really do want to say this because we have had fun, and it's hard for us to talk about this topic without all of the glaring problems and things that come with it from our theological perspective. But in all seriousness, Pope Francis was a man that dedicated to his life. He dedicated his life.
It's about to land.
You're killing me. We're gonna have to cut this, and now you're just making more work for Josh over here. Let's try this again. In all seriousness, Pope Francis was a man that dedicated his life to the church, even if he had a different understanding of that, explicitly speaking, than maybe we do. But anybody who does that, their life had meaning, and if it was done in the name of Jesus, I can't be against that. And as we've said before, yes, there will be heretics in heaven. So whether or not we agree with them or not is kind of beside the point. So yeah, all that being said, it's a sad day for many of our Catholic and brothers and sisters, but hopeful, and we're hopeful for you that you will get a leader who continues to move the needle closer to a true Catholic universal church, and not further away from that. If that makes any sense. Until next time.
What should be our first accoutrement on the I'm Telling God About This podcast? We need some swag. Leave a comment. Leave a comment below. I think we're onto something here. We're jealous of the iconography, some of the cool stuff. Should we get really cool signet rings? That'd be legit.
Guys, honestly, I don't know why we're asking. We already have it. Dude, you get the foam finger, right?
Foam finger. That's it, right there.
And we're back to VeggieTales tier Protestant symbolism. This is why we can't have nice things. This is why we can't have nice things.
Hey,
what if we had a John
what's
Wick
wrong with
coin?
this?
What if we had a John Wick coin that granted you exclusive access? We'll have a door. When we have our own speakeasy for the I'm Telling God About This podcast, it'll be their key to get in.
I like that plan.
There you go.
I like that. I'm all about expansion.
If you're still here and listening, we love you so much. Thank you. Like and subscribe.
For real, though.
Until next time.
See you guys.
Get off my lawn. You can't gaslight us. We know you want to talk about receipts. I got human history and Western civilization. What do you have? 20 years of dumpster fires, purple hair. People who don't know which bathroom to go into. Get off my lawn.